Today I wanted to take a little bit of time and answer some of your questions from the comment section. So let's get right into it. Chung asks, Barrick or B2? Well, my choice may be different than your choice, but in my view, Barrick has less potential upside, but it also comes with less risk and it's more diversified. However, B2 comes with more potential upside, but it also comes with more risk. Between those two companies, I would choose B2 Gold because I think B2 is cheaper. It's going to be growing at a faster rate. It has a better balance sheet. It pays a big dividend. I think that dividend's going to grow. But overall, I just really like how cheap it is. But there's a lot of risk there because a significant portion of their production comes from Mali, and Mali's a pretty unstable place right now. So for that reason, I wouldn't want it to be a huge part of my portfolio, but I am willing to take that risk for part of my portfolio because I think the potential upside is worth it. Next question, Bob asks, any thoughts on the buyout of Adventus? So I've made a couple videos on the channel of Adventus mining because it was one of my largest personal holdings. And a little while back, Silvercorp announced that they were taking over Adventus. Now this is about to be voted on by Adventus shareholders, but it's probably going to pass. And if you're an Adventus shareholder, soon you will probably be a Silvercorp shareholder instead. Now my thoughts on the buyout. Personally, I was happy with it. Yes, I know I made videos saying how this had potential to be a 5-bagger or a 10-bagger if a series of events took place. Now for me, it only ended up being a double because I think I bought it like 17 cents and then after the takeout, it was somewhere around 34 cents. Now that's not as good as a 5-bagger, but it takes away the financing risk, it takes away the mine building risk, it takes away any other country risk, it takes away like the risk that something goes wrong at that mine. There's a lot of things that can happen in mining. And yes, like 5-baggers or 10-baggers can happen, but typically a lot of things have to go right one after another for that to be the case. After that announcement, I became a seller of Adventus. And the reason for that is because I think Silvercorp shares are going to be under pressure for quite a while because of this transaction. Why? Well, for quite a few reasons. Number one, Silvercorp is way more liquid than Adventus is. So I think there's going to be a lot of Adventus shareholders who are using these new Silvercorp shares as a way to liquidate their investment because they can sell them a lot more easily. And also I think there's going to be a lot of Adventus shareholders who own the company because they wanted the high-grade copper exposure. But now they're going to own a company that's mostly silver. So I think there will be some people who sell because they wanted that copper exposure, but they don't want the silver exposure. And I also think there will be other Adventus shareholders selling because Silvercorp is operating in China. Yes, they've been repatriating the earnings from China. However, all of their operations are in China. Now, this El Domo project that they're buying from Adventus is in Ecuador, so they are going to be diversifying out of China. But I think there's going to be a lot of Adventus shareholders who are unwilling to take that China risk and will become sellers. And then on the other hand, I think there will be some Silvercorp shareholders who will turn into sellers. Number one is those people who were buying Silvercorp because they want the silver exposure. But now with the purchase of Adventus, they're moving into copper. And I think there will be some investors who don't like that move into copper and will therefore sell. And also, I think there's some Silvercorp shareholders who will say, hey, you've proven that you can operate well in China, and you've made me a lot of money in China. But now you're going from China to Ecuador, the other side of the world. They speak a different language there. Will you be successful operating in that other country? We don't know. So maybe there's some people that are uncomfortable with that and become sellers. So for all those reasons, I think there will be a lot of Silvercorp shareholders looking to sell those shares over the next year or so. So I suspect that the stock price will be under pressure for a while. Because they're diversifying out of China, I may be willing to become a Silvercorp shareholder, whereas before I wasn't. So I'm going to be keeping that on my watch list. And if there's a lot of pressure on the stock, like I suspect there will be, maybe I become a buyer. This next question comes from Steve. He says, I don't believe it's correct that you are taxed on Canadian company dividends if it's held in a US IRA or 401k or Roth. Well, this comes from a recent video when I was saying that if I'm holding shares in a Canadian company in my US retirement account, like a Roth IRA, for example, and that Canadian company pays me a dividend, I still get taxed on that dividend from Canada. Like there's a dividend withholding tax. But then I got a few comments on that video saying, hey, I don't think that's true. But I was certain that I had seen that in my retirement account. So I went back in there and looked. It's true, but it's not totally true. Because I went through all my transactions over the past few years and all the dividends that had been paid from Canadian companies. And some of the time I was taxed and some of the time I wasn't taxed. So I don't know why I'm taxed sometimes and why I'm not taxed other times. Now I'm more confused than ever. Maybe if you know, you can tell me in the comments below. This next question comes from my video on Sandstorm Gold. They say, when they spend all their cash on interest, paying down debt, share buybacks, and dividends, how are they going to grow? They need cash to buy royalties. Yes, they do need cash to buy royalties. However, they made some huge purchases a couple years back. And with those purchases, they have a ton of growth built in already. So even if they make no additional purchases whatsoever, the company's going to grow a lot in the coming years. Now, after they get that debt paid down and they no longer have to pay down debt and no longer have a big interest payment, well then after that, yeah, that will allow them to spend more money to buy new royalties to grow even faster. But yeah, in the meantime, they have to pay down debt and they have to pay that interest. The next question is, you're always digging deeply into the companies, you're diligent in this and clever. After watching your introduction into such mining companies, I'm left with the question of what research I could do. What additional research could you do? This is a good question because even if my analysis is really thorough and you buy the stock today, there's a lot of ongoing research. You need to follow that company closely. Look at the press releases. Digest those press releases and what they really mean. Look at the financials each quarter and see if you can notice any trends. And also look into the proxy statements. Look into what they're required to file with the SEC. A lot of this stuff is never put out as a press release. So if you're not looking into those proxy statements, well then you're going to miss a lot of stuff. That's just to say, like, even if your research is very, very thorough to begin with, and you're buying the stock, there's a lot of ongoing work that needs to happen. For example, I made a video a while back on Bluestone Resources. And I thought this was a very, very good speculation. It was trading super cheaply. It's a Lundin company, so great management. And I thought it had a lot of potential. I thought it had the potential to maybe be a 5-bagger or a 10-bagger in the future. And that was a substantial portion of my portfolio. But even though I thought it was a great speculation, I continued to follow the company closely. I continued to follow closely what was happening in Guatemala. And in addition to that, I was following Marn, like the Minister of Environment in Guatemala, to see what they were saying. Even going as far to join Facebook groups from the local community that's closest to where that mine was being built, which was Asuncion Mita. Because getting into a Facebook group like that gives you a sense of what the feeling is from the local community about having a potential mine there. And it also provides you with updates. So because I was doing this research into Marne and into Guatemala and into the local community, I discovered that Bluestone was at serious risk of getting their permit revoked. And I sold all my stock. Now, I don't catch things like this every time. There's stuff that I do miss. But I do try to work harder than everybody else. And because I try to work harder than everybody else, there's going to be a lot of times where I find out stuff like this before a lot of others do. And if you can do the same, I think you're going to maximize your chances of success. And something else you can do is you can go on to Seeking Alpha, for example, and read the most recent articles that people have written. Now, most of those are pretty surface level, and they don't really dive into the company. However, sometimes you'll come across one that shares some information that you didn't know. And whenever you can find out something that you didn't know, that's a good thing. And something else you can do is you can go on to some of the message boards. Like, for example, a good one is ceo.ca. And then from there, in the search bar, you type in the company that you're interested in, and you find the primary message board for that company. Now, whenever there's updates, whenever there's insider buying or selling, well, that's going to be posted in there. And then other members will post updates that they find. So that can be another good way to stay on top of what's happening with the company. However, something I don't like about that website is there's always a lot of people in those message boards like pushing their own agenda. Like they'll be short the company and trying to spread lots of fear and uncertainty about the company and then totally over exaggerating any bad thing about the company. And then there's others who are just hyping up the company because they own it. But if you can just like weed out that noise and then look for important updates to the company and do your own analysis on those, well then that's a way that I find CEO.ca helpful. The next person says, where can you complain when you guys screw us over with your analysis? Look, my analysis is not always going to be right. And you know what? Even if it is right, there's a million things that can happen with the company to make that analysis no longer valid. I'm always saying that these are just my opinions based on my own research, and you should do lots of your own research before investing any of your hard-earned money. And I don't just say that, I really, really mean that. Because if you don't know enough about the company, you're not going to know what to do if the stock price goes up. You're not going to know if it's a good time to sell or if it's a good time to buy more. And then on the other hand, if the stock price goes down and you're not super familiar with the company, you're also not going to know what to do. But maybe if you were following along with the company and researching it thoroughly, you would find out what's going on in Guatemala, and you would find out that they're at risk of losing their permit and that you could sell the stock before anything bad happened. I think it's really important that you always do lots of your own research before you buy the stock, but also after you buy the stock as well. Before buying a stock, I think you need to research it so well that you can be super confident in your decisions, that even if the stock price goes down, assuming there's no really bad news associated with that stock price going down, well then, that you would be able to buy more of that stock at a lower price, and you'd be happy to buy more of it at a lower price. Do you have any stock that will 5 or 10x in the next year? That will 5 or 10x in the next year. Not could, will. You know, there will be people who tell you that this stock is going to 5x in the next 12 months. But when it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if somebody tells you that, why are they telling you that? If they knew that a stock was going to 5x or 10x in the next year, don't you think that maybe they would just be buying as much of that stock as they possibly could instead of telling everybody that it's going to 5x or 10x? It seems to me that they would. But in this junior mining space, there's a lot of companies that could 5x or 10x in the next year. Like for example, in the exploration stocks. If one of these penny stocks hits a great drill hole, yeah, they're probably going to 5 or 10x. And it's probably not going to take a year to happen. It might happen in a day or a week or a month. But you know what? For every exploration stock that 10x's over the next year, there's probably 100 exploration stocks that lose 50% over the next year. So those aren't very good odds. You might as well play the lottery instead of trying to throw darts at a board of exploration stocks. Now you can increase your odds tremendously by choosing the right companies, because most of the exploration success is going to come from those people who've already been successful in the past. Some other stocks that could 5 or 10x in the next year are like junior silver producers. Because if the silver price really runs, let's say the silver price runs up to $50 in the next 12 months, yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of those stocks at 5x or 10x or even more. However, they also have a lot of leverage to the downside. And the price of silver is very volatile. So if the silver price goes down $3, you're probably going to lose 25% on your silver stocks. But if the silver price goes up $3, your silver stocks are probably going to be up 25%. Now I have some companies in my portfolio that I think will 5x or 10x over time, but I don't think that's going to happen in a year. But you know what? If the gold price were to run to $5,000 in the next 12 months, well then yeah, I'd probably have some stocks at 5x or 10x. But no, I'll probably never answer this question with a yes. There will always be companies that could, and under the right set of circumstances, they could. Like, for example, I made a couple videos on Adventus Mining a while back, and I thought that was a company that could 5 or 10x, but over a period of a few years. Now, they ended up getting bought out, and I ended up with only a double, but I mean, that's still pretty good. A double in a 6-month time frame is pretty darn good, and I'm not going to complain about that. So just be careful if somebody ever tells you that a stock is going to 10x in the next 12 months, because they probably have an ulterior motive. Let me know in the comments if you like this style of video. Maybe I'll do more like it, maybe I won't, depending on the type of feedback I get.